Have you ever looked around and wondered, why is it that some people seem to bounce back from just about anything, while other people get knocked down by one little setback and just stay down? Well, today we're diving into Dr. Martin Seligman's incredible book, Learned Optimism, to figure that out. And we're going to uncover a pretty radical truth. Your mindset isn't just how you react to life, it's actually the architect of it. Okay, so let's get right into it. And, the funny thing is, Seligman's whole journey to understanding optimism didn't start with optimism at all. It actually started by studying its complete opposite, a powerful, paralyzing state he would later call learned helplessness. I mean, this was the central mystery, right? What separates the people who are resilient from those who just seem defeated? The answer he found wasn't just about having more willpower or a better attitude. No, it was a deep psychological mechanism that would totally change how we think about everything from depression to achievement. And it all started, believe it or not, with an experiment that was supposed to be about something else entirely, but it accidentally uncovered this psychological trap that can literally stop us in our tracks. So picture this. You've got 3 groups of dogs. Group 1 gets a mild shock, but they can make it stop by pressing a panel. Simple, they have control. Group 2 gets the exact same shocks at the exact same time, but for them, the panel does nothing. They are totally powerless. And then Group 3, the lucky ones, they get no shocks at all. Now, the key thing to remember here isn't the shock itself. It's the experience of having control or not. Okay, so next, they put all 3 groups into a brand new situation. It's a box with a very low wall in the middle. A shop would come, but all they had to do was hop over this little barrier to be safe. Super easy, right? And this is where my jaw dropped the first time I read about this. The dogs that had control before, and the ones who'd never been shocked, yeah, they jumped over the wall, no problem. But the dogs who had previously learned that nothing they did mattered, they didn't even try to escape. They just laid down and took the shocks, even though freedom was just a tiny hop away. They had literally learned to be helpless. Now, this was a massive breakthrough. It proved it wasn't the adversity itself that caused them to give up. It was the belief that they were powerless to change it. And that led Seligman to the single most important idea in this whole book, something he calls our explanatory style. So what is an explanatory style? Think of it as your automatic go-to narrative for when things go wrong. It's the story you tell yourself without even thinking about it. And Seligman discovered that this internal story always revolves around 3 key dimensions, what he famously called the 3 Ps. Okay, the first P is permanence. This is all about time. When something bad happens, do you see it as a permanent stain on your life? A pessimist thinks, this is awful and it's never going to change. An optimist, on the other hand, sees it as a temporary storm, thinking, this sucks, but it's just a setback. It'll pass. The second P is pervasiveness. This is about space. Do you let a failure in one area of your life, say at work, bleed into everything else? A pessimist does. They get a bad review and think, I'm a failure at everything. It ruins their whole life. But an optimist? They build a firewall. They think, okay, that one project didn't go well, but I'm still a great dad and a good friend. They contain the problem. And that brings us to the final P, personalization. Who gets the blame? When things go wrong, a pessimist immediately points the finger at themselves. It's all my fault, I'm not good enough. And that is a direct torpedo to your self-esteem. An optimist looks outward. They'll consider the circumstances, the bad timing, other people's roles. It's not about dodging responsibility. It's about protecting your own spirit so you have the strength to try again. So when you put it all together like this, you can really see the difference, can't you? The pessimist sees bad stuff as permanent, pervasive, and personal. The optimist sees it as temporary, specific, and external. And look, this isn't just some feel-good philosophical difference. This has massive real-world consequences for your life. So what is the actual cost of having a pessimistic mindset? Well, as Seligman's research shows, the price you pay is steep, and it goes way beyond just being in a bad mood sometimes. I mean, the data here is just overwhelming. A pessimistic explanatory style is a huge risk factor for depression. It makes smart, talented people achieve less than they could simply because they give up more easily. It's even been linked to having a weaker immune system and worse physical health. The bottom line is, a pessimistic mindset literally robs you of your own potential and your own happiness. Now, you might be thinking, hold on a second, maybe pessimists aren't wrong. maybe they're just more realistic. There's actually a term for this: depressive realism. It's the idea that they're just seeing the world for what it is. But what the research found is something way more interesting and honestly a lot more hopeful than that. So get this. In one study, they found that depressed individuals were brutally accurate about how much control they actually had over a situation. But the non-depressed people, they consistently thought they had more control than they really did. It suggests that a little bit of a positive illusion, this slightly skewed sense of optimism, might actually be healthy. It's what keeps us trying, pushing forward, even when things are tough. And this plays out in the real world in a big way. Seligman did this landmark study with MetLife insurance agents. He found that the agents who were natural optimists outsold their pessimistic coworkers by 8% in the first year. Okay, not bad. But in the second year, they outsold them by a whopping 31%. That's the power of persistence kicking in. So if optimism is this powerful, can you learn it? And this brings us to the absolute best part of this whole story. Seligman's answer is a clear, loud, resounding yes. Your explanatory style is not a life sentence. It is a habit. And just like any other habit, you can change it. And he gives us a super powerful, practical tool to do exactly that. First, you gotta understand the ABCs. We tend to think that in adversity, the A directly leads to a consequence, the C. So you get cut off in traffic, and the consequence is you feel rage. But that's not what happens. In between A and C, there's a crucial step. B, your belief about the event. It's your belief, that person intentionally disrespected me, that actually creates the anger. So to change the outcome, you add 2 more letters to the model. D is for disputation. This is where you actively argue with those automatic pessimistic beliefs. You challenge them. And E is for energization. That's the feeling of relief and control you get when you successfully debunk your own negative story. So what does disputation look like in practice? Well, it's not about just thinking happy thoughts. It's about being a detective for your own mind. You ask questions. Is there any evidence that contradicts this negative thought? What are some alternative explanations here? Maybe that driver who cut me off is racing to the hospital. And maybe the most powerful question of all is just to ask yourself, is believing this thought even useful to me right now? And that's really the core of it all. This isn't about blind, naive positivity. It's about what Seligman calls non-negative thinking. It's just about being more accurate. It's about taking off the dark, distorted glasses of pessimism and seeing the situation for what it really is, not the catastrophic version your brain first offers up. So, at the end of the day, what all this research shows us is that your explanations for things, the stories you tell yourself, they aren't just a commentary on your life. They are actively creating the next chapter. The story you tell yourself today becomes the life you live tomorrow. So the only real question left is, what story are you going to choose to tell? Thanks for watching.